We're here. I'm so excited. First of all, any of you who listen to the podcast or know Tamikka in any way know whenever I can get her to visually show up in a space. I mean, audio, yes, but we're also putting these on YouTube. So visually, and she cute as F today to the point where I had to ask her why my camera don't do what her camera do, and I'm ordering a new camera. So this will be changing. So we are very clear so that there's some equity on the podcast when I'm recording with Tamikka Claybrook. But I'm super excited to welcome Tamikka back to an episode of Shaping the Shift, especially during this love series, all about love series that we're doing, this conversation around shaping love, these really delicious, like meaty, intimate episodes that we're having as we play with this new format. For those of you who don't know Tamikka, you don't know me then, because you cannot know me what I do over the last 3 years without knowing Tamikka Claybrook. Tamikka is the earth sign to my fire sign, and literally just balances me out in every single way. Also, I'm the oldest child, so I've never had a big sister. So this is my big sister, and she is an only child. So now she gets to experience what it feels like to have a bratty little sister. And so there's just all the different ways that we love to make this work. travel companion and partner, an excellent mommy to Sausage, the most human dog you will ever meet, and just co-parent to the Black of the Brain. Just the list goes on and on and on. Currently we are co-CEOing Marley Ayo. Well, I know we're figuring our stuff out, but and always, if you know my work, especially the work over the last 3 years, then Tamikka Claybrook is a big part of why you know about it. And so and she's just a partner in my life. I have life partners that Ebony and Janice and I have fleshed this out, talking about this publicly as well. And when it comes to abundance, when it comes to Marley Ayo and my creative output, there's absolutely no denying that Tamikka is my greatest partner in that. And because of that, because we are what we are and we don't code switch, she's also been my partner on my love journey. I've been her partner on her love journey, and so on and so on. So that is not a bio. That's life. This is life for us. This is life.
That's life.
And so we've had conversations, and I love discussing with you. My guest, Mona, is helping me to diversify my language around this. So I adore and deeply enjoy having conversations with you around, love, particularly conversations around how the idea of ownership can actually distort what love is intended to be. Mm-hmm. And as a person, you always say you love to witness. Who witnesses, I feel like your expertise and your observations of love, throughout your lifetime and with people close to you are like essential for us to discuss today. So I want to start with my first question, which is for everyone, which is, what is your current living definition of love? With the understanding that tomorrow or even an hour from now, that could completely shift and change. But what is the current living definition that you are living and embodying at this moment?
I should have known that question was coming. I actually should, out of anybody, I should have actually known that question was coming. But I did not prepare for that. Well, you know me well enough to know my definition of love is it has a lot to do with sovereignty and freedom. I don't have that in a quotable necessarily, but love is sovereignty, right? So for me personally, anybody, anything that I love can do whatever, right? So I love sausage. Y'all will see sausage. I love sausage. Sausage is my moon, my stars, he's the yin to my yang, like he's my, I don't know, sausage, right? But if sausage loves somebody, I don't limit that. Like he can go wherever. If he looked up one day and just fell in love with somebody and was like, I gotta go live with them, he could go live with them, right? My love, how I view love is loving that other person enough for them to live their fullest expression of love in life. So they can be their fullest and not have any limits on how they love and where they love and who they love.
Has that always been your definition? Or like, was that a journey?
Yes and no. So that was my starting definition. And then through relationships, I learned that that wasn't supposed to be the definition. And then I worked myself back to it because that's where I am my best self. Right. So it started that way. Then, you know, men, you don't care. I can do anything. I was like, well, it's not that. It's, you know, I want you to do you. And then I worked myself back to it because that is organically, that's just what I believe.
And how that's like, so it's beautiful, right? It sounds so spiritual and deep and wonderful. And then there's praxis, which maybe that's, you know, I don't want to assume that's been easy for you to put that into practice, but it may not have been easy for people that you were in a relationship with or people you've observed. So that model, that idea of sovereignty, because I do sense that most people do not want to be the thing or the one who's limiting someone they love's full expansion of themselves. The conversations we've been having in this series, though, keeps bringing us back to the idea and the reality that American society has a love deficit, and that love deficit creates love insecurity, right? Even though there's no deficit, there's no actual deficit of love. Love is abundant and love is everywhere and it's available and it's accessible and it's free. The perception is that love, there's not enough of it, or there's these things you have to do to get it. There's these, you know, expectations or these sort of imaginary litmus tests that we have to pass, right? And so how have you navigated the pitfalls of American society in order to maintain that definition? And how have you seen those pitfalls, you know, impact people around you?
Oh, that's so heavy. I'm going to start with the pitfalls.
I'm going to dive into the heaviest part of that heavy.
Don't be calling out my Virgo. And die.
That's so heavy. And here we go. Yeah.
The pitfalls is what I have witnessed is when people start limiting how, I'm going to go relationship, just straight up relationships, limiting how their partners love, they squeeze them so tight. It's this ownership thing that we have in America, right? I own you. You know, you can't, let's just say it's somebody at work, because I actually have this example, somebody at work that you have like a vibe with, right? And you guys can talk about everything. It doesn't take away from that person's partner, but that work husband or work wife, I've seen it a few times. Yeah. That starts this divide in the relationship. And for me, it's like, hey, that person enjoys these conversations. They come out better and brighter, and they have these new ideas, and they can, you know, come home and just, you know, be fuller, right? Because at some point, I ain't never been married, but I've been in some long-term things. You get tired of hearing what they got to say. Like, I heard that before. I done heard it before. I need something new, right? By having these outside conversations, you can bring something new in. So the pitfall is when that limits, then that fractures, and then that ownership breaks, and then now we're not in this together.
Yeah, but how do we even, so this is what I want to flesh out.
Yeah.
How do we even get to that? Like what is so tender? I mean, I have my ideas, but I want to hear it through your perspective. What is so tender for people about somebody else is making the person I love laugh? someone else is making the person I love happy. What button is that pushing inside of us? And where is that button being installed?
Now, the installation, I think everything goes back to childhood, but my traumas just be showing up places. I think it all goes back to childhood. But from what I've seen, it looks like insecurity. It just like, I'm not secure in this love. I know I talk about this a lot, and I'm going to say it here. RuPaul, in an interview with Vanity Fair, you know what I'm about to talk about, because it's my thing, says that, his partner could be in love with somebody else or have an experience with somebody else. That's not going to break their bond. They're going to continue to be together because I love this person so much that I want them to have, like I said, the fullest expression of their lives, right? He is secure in his love with his partner. He is secure in his love with his marriage, right? So nothing from the outside can break that. Nothing's going to break that for them.
Unless they break it from within.
Unless they break it from within. And that's
so wait, that's a piece. Let's stop there, because that's a piece. So I think one thing is the illusion that something external can break the bond.
That's it.
Right? So there's the belief that something external can be stronger than what's actually happening internally. The moment that is believed, the bond begins to weaken.
Yes.
Right. Okay. I also think, like in my conversation with Mamona about, more than words and language, that because again, America doesn't have a love praxis, and we don't have a cultural understanding of what love is. People are left to their own devices about that, which means it's like this sort of free-flowing idea of what that is, but what that can create is like no baseline, right? And so without a baseline of what love feels like and what love produces in us, and like you talked about, the person's glowing, and so there could be an exchange of love. That doesn't mean that you all are in love. That doesn't mean you all want to be together. It's just an exchange of, I would say, spondo or even erotic energy, right? Transformational energy. That because there's no language for the different ways that love can be shared, expressed, and deposited, that doesn't immediately tie to like a patriarchal idea of ownership, right? We limit the amount of love we receive. So when we have said it to a person, and because we are perceiving ourselves to have a limited supply of it from the world, this person becomes the source. And then anybody else who's trying to take from that source is what? A threat. It's almost like a resource, right? Like oil or water, right? Like, because we've convinced ourselves that air isn't air, or water isn't water or land, right? Because we've convinced ourselves that these things were just here for our use, and we can tap into them and use them in a very abusive and non-intentional way. Because we've done that, we seek it in a way that is like for sustenance. And then when we find somebody we feel we're getting it from, we remember that lack, that love poverty that we feel like our country is struggling with, our society, and we assume that other person is going to be coming to take that from us. And then where does that leave us,
Exactly. This actually reminds me, because I'm an insider, I've already gotten to hear some of the episodes already. It reminds me of Talani's episode. And when we're talking about where does this originate, it originates in childhood, where parents own the child. You're here to serve me. My love is, it can feel conditional upon how you show up as a child, right? And that's still that's that ownership. And teachers. So it's this ownership thing that just limits so much of who we are.
Within that ownership, though, it's also the idea of earning it. Right? So when you bring up the childhood piece, there's that piece of, I have to behave a certain way to be worthy of it, which means I'm not showing up authentically, which I think also feeds the insecurity that, I shared this on the other episode as well, that I think you and I had this conversation too, about like Americans, if you tell them you love them, they'll be like, tell me why, right? And when I don't hear that with my friends who aren't from here or don't live here, because the assumption is like, okay, if you said something that strong, you have your reasons, not why. And I think that why is so fucking interesting, because I feel like the why has a lot to do with, and it could be a million things, let me just say that, but I feel like it has a lot to do with, I want to know so I can continue to do that thing. And I can be mindful of anybody else who's trying to do that thing, because this is the thing that earned me love.
Right.
Right. Ooh,
Yes.
that's so nasty. That's so unfortunate and sticky and limiting, and but it's real. It's so real. I mean, I've done it. I still fall into that when I'm trying to love, quote unquote, my family. I will find myself thinking of what I can do to make sure that they know that I love them, as opposed to, as Josiah Madden put it on one of our previous episodes of Shaping the Shift, minding my business and trusting that me being me to my fullest capacity, my brightest light, is exactly what the people around me need, and the only version of love that they require, right? Yeah. I mean, it gets really, it's hard to love, and it's hard to let go of the idea that the love you found will be sustainable.
Yes. Yes. It's the receiving of love, right? Because you again, you and I are us. So we naturally give love. We just float around giving love, right? And as we receive love, well, I'm going to speak for myself on this. The feeling of not having to do something that warranted the love that I'm receiving, right? Like just an outpouring of love. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, well, let me do X, Y, Z because you've shown me so much love and I don't know how to process this, right? Can give, but can't receive.
Oh yeah, that's definitely a problem that we have.
Yeah, right? Like,
oh, you know that is. Yeah.
You know, I remember telling my aunt when you asked me about my journey, like, how did I get here? During my in-between phase, I had said to her, thank you for loving me. And she was like, you don't have to thank me for loving you.
Right.
I love you. And it shook me to my boots. I was like, oh, wait, what? Wait, why? To your point, but why do you love me?
That goes back to the Talani episode too, of we're destined to love. Like, it's something that would happen whether we thought about it or not. Yes. It's not something that we would necessarily turn off and on. I think sometimes we do that because we're told we're supposed to love a certain way, love a certain kind of person, love a certain kind of thing. And really it just will flow where it wants to flow, because it itself is a spirit.
It itself is a spirit. So that's the pitfall in my mind. Holding on too tight doesn't allow the person to love. I'm going to use another dog reference real quick.
Yes, we love that.
Me and my dogs.
I'm sure we have many STS dog lovers out there.
Yes. So before Sausage, my soul has a dog named Vanilla Bean Latte. When Nilla met Nia, she was about 15, and he saw her and fell in love with her. Now, Nilla went everywhere with me like Sausage goes everywhere with me. Like, we were thick as thieves. We were just the two. That's my boy. And he fell in love with her. And that was hard to process. You know, nothing in me would allow me to pull him from her. Nothing. To this day, you know, when I do get to see him and he's like, yeah, and I'm like, I want you home with me. But you're so happy here. This is your life. You know, and it's that, right? Yeah. It's seeing him so happy makes my heart so full. Going to the witnessing piece, I couldn't imagine holding him just because it makes me happy.
Yeah. Ooh, tease out that piece, right? So in that moment that you're like, oh wait, you're happy with Nia. Walk us through the stages of like realization and acceptance in that, because it sounds like a moment, but that ain't a moment. That is a process. So for those of us who are trying to move from a proprietorship version of love, which we were taught, no, there's no judgment, like literally. I feel the same way about land. Who can own land? Who can own a river? Who can own, like, it's just ridiculous, this whole idea of ownership. But what are the steps to that process from, like I said, realization to acceptance?
So for me, the process was, I saw Nilla look at Nia. I saw Nia look at Nilla. I saw the same look he gave me, he gave her. And my heart did that thing. And anybody who's been in a relationship knows this thing where it tightens, right? And immediately I wanted just to pick him up and run away, like, it's my boy, mine. And then I just saw those two interacting with each other. So I literally walked away. I went upstairs and I sat down. Okay. So I was at a crying phase at that point. You know, I hate to cry.
I know.
And
I know y'all are getting exclusive content at this moment, just so you know.
Yeah, I really do. And I cried like it wasn't nobody's business. And I was pissy. I was really.
Oh, so it wasn't okay. I like this. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't easy. It was a thing.
It was a thing. Now,
okay.
I didn't let them see the thing, but I was up there being.
That could be our pride and vanity as well. But so we didn't have a public facing incident, but it was a thing. It wasn't cute.
I went full only child on it. And I pouted and I stormed about. And then over the course of like a week of just looking at them, I didn't say anything to them. I didn't try to make him come with me. They went for walks together. It was real cute, like, folks. It was real cute, right? And I actually just witnessed their love, which, you know, is my thing. I'm a witness and a resource.
Okay. Ooh, that's another step I hear.
Yes.
To shift from being the subject matter to objective and become the witness this other thing and witness the other entity as something outside of yourself. Because I think what ends up happening is we see them in relation to ourselves. So we have the tantrum. So we separated. We took a moment to ourselves.
Yes.
In that moment, we had the full ego breakdown.
Yep.
Let it go 100%. And then that allowed us to shift from being the subject matter to becoming objective enough to witness what was happening outside of ourselves.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Because it wasn't about me.
Wait, because we think it is always about us. We think it is always about us. Not just love, but if somebody's unhappy, if somebody is suffering, we just always make it. I've talked a lot about how the tension, even the tension of transition, one of the hardest things is that it's not about me, and only power I have here is to witness. Only power I have here is to watch. We hate that. We hate the thought of that. But you came through that witnessing, you came to the conclusion that it wasn't about you.
It wasn't about me. It really wasn't. It was about how he loved her, how she loved him. And here was the best part, when she was out with her sister and it was just me and him, it was still me and him.
Yeah.
Him loving
so it
her
didn't
like that.
impact, you didn't lose anything in the relationship with him.
No. He still loves
me. So that's another myth.
That
would be myth. Losing love or losing relationship.
Yeah. And then he came to live with me for a little while. She was in college and we were us. And then when she was ready for him, he went back home with her and they were them. And at no point did that love change in any of the realms, not with him or with me. Right? Like,
well, because you were able to make that shift from centering self to witnessing others.
Yeah.
And then Nilla was able to be fully Nilla and receive maximum love. From everybody. Everybody.
What would it look like for me to limit that for him? And that's how I am in all of my relationships. Like, my best friends have best friends.
Yeah.
But who am I to limit how somebody loves and who loves you?
So okay, so I'm about to, for the petty people, I see you. I see your hands. I see your hands going up. I see the petty people. I feel them in my spirit. So for the petty folks in the back, let me just raise a few questions. One, I feel like what comes up in those moments is, but he loves me too. So how do we decide which one? And that's a false question, because there doesn't necessarily have to be a decision between the two, right? Because Nilla would have been happy living with you, but you did somehow determine that Nilla was happiest living with Nia. How did you determine that? How did that understanding come into place?
But he's a sovereign being. He determined that.
Oh, he wanted. So how did you know that though?
When
what did he exhibit that let you know? Sorry, I'm teasing so much, but I understand my petty people and the petty in me. I'm just I want to make it tangible. Talani's word, love is tangible. I want to make it tangible for us.
When we were in the same space, he would sit on her.
Mm.
And I could be in my feelings about that, or I could do what I love to do, which is witness that and see her little being light up when he do that, and see his little Nilla smiles, and he has these eyelashes, he has a whole thing, a ham, you know, and he would light up. And so he chose. And I feel like that in my partnerships too, in the past. Like, if that's where you want to be, I love you still, go be.
And that choice is not about anything you lack.
No, it has nothing to do with me.
It has nothing to do with you, because there's also so many factors about what an entity needs and when they need it at their particular journey, soul journey, life journey, that to assume it's about you and what you lack is actually quite self-centered. I mean, I know my petty people, I'm like half and half right now. I'm half deep and I'm half petty, right? I'm just being honest. So I feel the tug, but the reality is when you follow the line, when you follow the thread, right, it does lead back to a self-centeredness that is the antithesis of love, right?
100%. When I keep saying it's not about me, that doesn't mean that they don't love me. That doesn't mean I don't have feelings on it. That means their love matters to me. How they show up and how they get to experience life matters to me. Matters to me enough for me to pull myself out of the situation and sit and witness it. I'm a whole earth sign. My petty run deep, right? My petty's not going to limit someone's love. Not at this point. Like I said, there was a stage in the middle there.
Yeah.
When I was like,
how did that feel though? Tell me the difference in how it feels in your body when you were in that stage versus where you are now and when you started, like your definition.
I felt out of alignment in that stage. Everything felt hinky to me, right? Everything, it was 24/7 self-judgment. You know, we already talked to you about body issues, right? It was like magnified. Everything was magnified of what I lacked, what I wasn't. I should have said, I found myself censoring how I talked, what I did, how I moved. It was so, I just didn't,
tight.
It felt tight. It felt so tight.
And managed. And I'm sure like an excess of energy going towards controlling and managing.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like.
That's what it feels like. That's what, I don't have a big jealousy streak in me, right? And those things, they kind of aligned in that space, right? When it was like, no, you're mine. And it was like, it felt, I didn't feel happy.
You know, I don't think this is exclusive. This concept of sovereignty immediately draws a line directly to polyamory or any other form of open, expansive love. I think even in monogamous relationships, this understanding, again, you know, going back to Talani's episode about unconditional love doesn't necessarily dictate longevity. It doesn't mean that it'll always be right here living next to me in the same bed. It just means that it'll always be a part of me, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I have to own it. So I think the ownership piece is really about sometimes longevity, and we define love as something that never ends, but does that necessarily mean that love never ending and love always being in the same person, relationship dynamic as me are two different things.
Yes. To your point, yes. Any person I've ever loved, I still love.
Right. That's my point.
Right.
That is my point. Mm-hmm.
And that's that. The ownership piece makes it sticky. My greatest love held romantic love. I could do and go anywhere.
Tell me about the joy you experienced, because we talked about like Nilla was happy, you could see Nia be happy, and you did get the joy of witnessing. But when we talked about your embodied experience, you described it as so tight. So there has to be some sort of joy, release in when you make that kind of choice outside of ego. Can you talk about, so we know what the tightness feels like. What does the opposite feel like when you release?
It feels like the smile I have, right? It feels like ease. It feels like I can be my full self in that space, right? For me, that tightness meant I had to restrict because I was so guarded. That release means I can be free. I can just sit and witness. I can sit and just be my full self without all of the stuff, which for me gets heavy.
I would imagine that it also frees you up energetically to create, energetically to like unearth and find other things that you also enjoy, cherish, adore, love, because you don't have you're not using your energy to manage.
It allowed me to welcome sausage because I didn't want it. I didn't want to do that, right? I was sausage. He was going to go to my cousin. He was going to have a beautiful, privileged little Redondo Beach life, right? The freedom of it allowed me to love him and to see how he loved me and to still be open when he cuddles up to every little pretty person he sees.
Yes, he does. Yes,
because
he
he's
does.
shown up to us, right?
Yes, he does.
It's just freedom for me. That's what it looks like for me and feels like for me.
And just again, for the petty people in the back, I just want to say, because petty people in the back, we've used examples of like non-human love.
Yeah.
And they could be like, well, that's different with human love, who could, I think human love can be messier, honestly. I think it can be messier than, non-human love. And so what are some things you can say about your human experiences with it that helped it to be an easeful experience? And what are some of the complications that people can, you can do one of those, Hove did that, so hopefully you have to go through that. Like, what are some of the lessons you learned in your human dynamics with this that we can benefit from?
I have a good one for this.
Okay.
So as I share all the time, my first love, my first everything is still one of my best friends in the world. In our entire lives, we were together when we were 15, 16 years old. We grown now. And he's had marriages, yada, yada. In different relationships that he's had, I've had to fall back, right? Because for me, love everybody, live your life, right? But for his partner, it's, why she's still here, right? And for me, managing that piece and never feeling like he's choosing something over me, right? Or putting me to the side. That's a conscious choice. I sat with that during that little in-between sticky time. I was like, bro, but we always, right? And then I was like, but this is your love. And then I got to witness that. And once again, that tightness I felt just fell right off, right? But the complication is their partner not understanding that our love is expansive. It's no longer romantic. It's family. It's more than that. It's not, but even when I say it's more than that, the wrong wife would be like, what you mean it's more than that?
Right.
No, I'm the more than that. And I get that, but it's also playing I was about to say playing your part, staying in your lane, fam. It's also knowing when you have to kind of sit back and just witness from afar all of the things.
And not thinking of it as a lesser love.
and not thinking of it as a lesser love or any of those things. It's just different. And that's okay. People love their kids different.
Yeah.
Right. But you ain't gonna choose a kid.
Right.
Right. It's the same in that space. I hope that answered that. But
no, I mean, I what I'm trying to gather are I think what I want people listening to understand is to think about the ways in which they've placed whatever type of love you're in. Again, it's not just romantic, it's not just parent child. In your friendships, please look at this, in your various dynamics, in your work relationships, where are we placing limits? How are those limits related to ego and centering ourselves? How different of a perspective could we have if we shifted to the witnessing space, which opens up way more possibilities for us? And for the purpose, right, of freeing up space in our minds, souls, spirits, and bodies to do what we came to this planet to do, which is fuck some shit up, create some shit, taste some shit, enjoy some shit, live some shit, right? I don't want us so crunchy with managing, and I do mean us. Give us free. I do want us free of this feeling of management and entitlement and proprietorship that feels so fucking heavy. We can't remember or tap into what this whole thing is about, right? That there can be many, many ways to experience God, nature, love, peace, joy, happiness. And if we have over attached to one, each decade, you might want to explore a new one. You know what I mean? Each year, each month, that may be asking a lot. But can we at least do a review once a decade, fam, and say, have I kind of shifted to the center of this in a way that has limited my perspectives and therefore my possibilities? And so this is definitely one of the episodes that's going to have stings and tickles. I already know it. There's definitely going to be, I don't like that. There's definitely going to be like, ooh, I never thought about that. Ooh, yeah, there's going to be a lot of that. That's your business. That is for you. That is just great reflection. It may point out where some of the limits are. It may point out where some of the more flexible parts are. But what we can release, we can choose to release these false ideas of ownership. And if we are going to be in, agreements with people, let them be free, let them be loving, and let them be sovereign and fulfilling in a way that our full and whole selves can shine. Is that ultimately what it's about, Tamikka?
That is 100% what it's about. Give them the gift of sovereignty as you sit in your sovereignty.
Yeah, and yourself, because you came here to love in a non-limited form. You came here to just be expansive. And how we define some of these things can get in the way of that, no matter how well-intentioned we are. We are the product of a very constructed society. And so it may feel weird to push against that sometimes, but baby, the amount of breath you can reclaim and space we can reclaim, I think is worth trying, or at least listening.
At least listening.
Oh, I love that you came on here with this topic. I don't think they expected this from us, but I'm glad. I'm really glad. And I love all the examples, human and non-human. And I think this threads well with the other episodes. And it's just going to be another beautiful contribution to the All About Love series that we're doing. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Love y'all. Don't be mad at us. We love you. Bye.